Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. I had the title of what I wanted to share today was A Precious Picture of Jesus. And as I was trying to decide on what to share today and asking the Lord, I was felt led to share hopefully something simple about Jesus from John 10, if you can turn there. And as I was thinking about it, I was reminded of this man called Dave Wilkerson. And I don't know how many of you know him. Maybe some of the kids don't know him, but he was a preacher, a godly man who died a bit over 10 years ago. And I've read some of his things and been very blessed. And I haven't heard that much of his preaching, but his life really was the thing that blessed me when I learned more about his life. And the thing that blessed me the most, there's one specific point that I always remember about him. When he died, his son said about him something that impacted me a lot, and it was something about Jesus. He said about David Wilkerson, his dad, for reasons of his own, he had turned down every invitation from a U.S. president to visit the White House, but he would drive hundreds of miles out of the way during an evangelism tour so he could meet an obscure nun who had written something about Christ that had moved him. And to me, that's the number one thing that I appreciated knowing and learning about David Wilkerson's life, more than his ministry. There's a lot of things, blessings, but when I see a simple heart of something that can get me closer to Jesus, something a little more of Jesus, it was such a blessing to me to see that in his life. And said, I was amazed how much he treasured one precious truth about God. And get him and about Jesus. And he didn't care about honor and position and big ministry. He wasn't about religion, but he said, there's something precious about Jesus here. I'll drive a few hours for that. No, I don't need to go see the president. But and I thought, do I really have that heart? I hope I do, but not really to that extent. So I want more of it. And so that's why I believe the Lord confirmed for me. Hopefully we can just take a look at Jesus' life, something simple about his life, a picture of him, and just have more of that heart of, yeah, it's worth seeking more of God's heart in Jesus and to see him a little clearer. And so John 10, I'll just read from verse 1 to 15 a bit. And as we read, even the kids, hopefully I'll ask a question at the end of it. I'll ask one question. What's the two things that Jesus compared himself to in this parable? The parable of the Good Shepherd. So I'll read it here. John 10:1. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus spoke to them, but they did not understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to them again, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and he will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming, and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Okay, so maybe kids, you could try answering, what are the two things that Jesus said he was in this parable? I think I saw Zealand's hand first.
He was the door and the shepherd.
Oh, you got both of them. Okay, very good. The door and the good shepherd. Yep, he said, I'm the good shepherd in verse 11. But then earlier in there, he said, I am the door of the sheep, in verse 7. And why did Jesus say he was both the door and the good? Did Jesus get the parable mixed up in his head? That he's not sure what he is, what's representing what. As far as I know, this is the first and only time in the Bible that God is compared in one single parable to two things. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But I saw a picture maybe a couple years ago that helped me understand it better, and it really blessed me too to see it about Jesus, and it comforted me and encouraged me. And I think without even explaining it, you'll recognize why Jesus said he was the door and the shepherd in one picture. So yeah, we can bring it up. So I think it's pretty easy to see why Jesus is the door and the good shepherd. The good shepherd is always the door too. Otherwise, he's not a good shepherd. There's not a door on hinges. The door is the shepherd. It has to be to protect the sheep. There's just the picture of Jesus here that comes to my mind is just so many things: protection and security and rest and freedom from fear and comfort and love. There's so much in this one picture, and so he sits in the door, and all the wolves have to go to Jesus first before trying to get past. And all the life-threatening things, he lays down his life for the sheep. He stands in place of everything, and it doesn't. For me, it didn't take long to think of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. What does that mean? It means I don't have to worry about grabbing anything or having any fear anymore, because the Lord is my shepherd. He's my door too. So we've sometimes used that word filter with regard to Romans 8:28, that God only allows what's good for those who love him. And so that's like what Jesus is in this picture, a filter of my sheep. I'm not going to let anything touch them that he hasn't allowed. And so to me, that's been one of the greatest sources of freedom and rest to me, is to know whatever is here today, it's because God wanted it there. That's it. I mean, we could say that he caused it, or we could say he allowed it. God, but whatever we could say, we say it's here because, in a sense, God allowed the situation to be here today. Maybe it was a result of things out of my control, maybe it was even a result of my own disobedience or my mistake. But whatever it is, God allowed me to make that mistake. Whatever it is, he let it in. And so nothing enters into the pen past the shepherd without God approving it. And so praise God that he's the blessed door as well as the good shepherd. And so I'm just such a simple thing about Jesus that picture that I saw this, and I keep in mind now. And usually my default tendency is to think about outward things, like job situations or some outward trial, health situations. But I saw that there's inward things too that he's protecting me from. And for example, things like guilt, that he can stand in the door and keep all the guilt away if I'm staying with him in the pen. That the fact that I'm 100% absolutely free of my guilt, of my sin forever, that never here on earth will I ever have to be guilty again, and never in heaven either for eternity. And I think I can take that for granted sometimes, that I don't have to feel guilty. But when I think, sometimes I consider stories about people who were really, really weighed down with their sin. They knew that there was a price to pay for their sin. They were sinners, and they knew that they were sinners, and that God is just. And if there was a God who was just, then God shouldn't even be talking to them. God shouldn't ever be coming close to them. God should cast them into hell forever. And that's what justice means, and that's what it means for me. And I think some people saw that before they were saved. I think the Lord saved me when I was younger, so I kind of saw it almost in parallel. But I appreciate thinking about it now as if Think about what if I wasn't. Think about what if I did have that guilt, the weight of sin on me. And to see that the Lord freed me from that, and that he's that good shepherd there who laid down his life so that my weight is gone, so that my life can stay. That there's no more franticness that I need to have. The peace of the sheep that they have there is so wonderful. And Romans 8:1 says there's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. But one problem comes in that I see is the condemnation can sometimes still come back in. We know that we shouldn't be condemned. We've heard and we've learned an important principle. No, there's a no entry road to two things: discouragement and condemnation, because God freed us from that. But sometimes it's still a real temptation to be condemned, to feel that I'm not doing enough, I'm not performing enough, so much sin still. But I was blessed to see that's not the Lord's will to be carrying that. And I was reminded of a brother. I was around 21 years old. I met this brother who was at the church I was going to at the time. And he had probably one of the most hard lives of anybody that I knew at the time. And he was a little older than me. And since his teenage years, he'd basically been living on his own and supporting himself, because his dad was never in the picture, as far as I know, and his mom passed away when he was young. And so he basically had to support himself and work. And he never had much money. He didn't end up going to college. The work that he was doing, he got injured, permanently injured, and so he wasn't able to continue doing that. So he had to get some other kind of mediocre job, and he was renting a room and just barely getting by. But his demeanor was always calm, always restful, always cheerful. And one time we were at this Bible study, and at the Bible study, to start off, they always had an icebreaker question. And the question that week was, everybody has to answer before the study starts, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? And so they went around the circle, and people were kind of saying, yeah, average, like 4, maybe 5, 6. I don't really remember what I said, maybe 7 or something. And then they got to him, and he said 9. And it was interesting to me. I couldn't forget, why was it that the one with the hardest life out of all of us was the happiest? And I would think maybe he'd answer 2 or 3 out of 10, but he was happy. And I mean, there was people in that study that were successful, had good lives, raising good kids that were following the Lord, but his was the highest. And I don't know his secret, but my guess is, from what I saw in him, 2 things. One was, I sensed that he didn't love the world. There was a contentment there that he wasn't chasing after, I need to get a better life than this. He was just restful. It's like, this is the life God gave me, and that's okay. I'll just go along and enjoy what I have in the Lord. And he wasn't frantic to get out of it and chase after more. He did have a hard life. I think he was trying to get different position, different job, but he seemed to forget about himself. So there was a genuine humility there. I think that's a good definition of humility. He forgot about himself. He didn't really think about all his trials. It's like, I think I thought about it more than he did. And he didn't really notice, like, who is this such a person who's been through such a hard life? He didn't really dwell on it. He just kept on living. And he had a genuine heart there, that it wasn't all about him and what he lacked and all the life that he had. So I respected that about him. And the second thing was going back to the thing about guilt, is I saw a genuine freedom from fear and guilt, and a security in who God was and what Jesus did for him. He didn't really struggle over thoughts of what if, in his physical life. The same was true spiritually. He seemed to be saved. He got saved. Somebody shared the gospel with him, and he committed his life to Jesus, and he believed it. And he didn't really go back to saying, "Oh, what if I'm not saved? What if my sins? Like, I'm such a sinner." I mean, he knew he was a sinner, and he didn't struggle also with the guilt of, "I'm not doing enough." I think he. I remember him having some like he would get pens from the church and pass them out at work, and it's like, And I always remember that that was sort of one of his ministries he felt he had. And he didn't say, well, I need to be doing more. Oh, I need to be doing more for God. But he was like, yeah, it's something that he could do. In my mind, I've sometimes struggled with more. I'm not doing enough. But he was so restful. And I think, I don't know, but he probably had a picture in mind of Jesus as Jesus is a bit more of this good shepherd than I did. And so I was blessed by that's he was happy because he lived like a simple sheep, and I think I need more of that. So I appreciated the peace and the rest that the Lord's will is for us, to not carry things. We should have a zeal for pressing into Jesus, and I think the way that transfers to this picture, so it's a zeal for getting closer to Jesus. To me, it says I should be a sheep fighting to get more towards the front, closer to Jesus. But it shouldn't be a sheep frantic that, am I in the pen or not? And I believe that's the difference. There should be a zealousness about, I want to get close. I think, in my mind, Jesus and God, they want me to be secure. And they want me to be closer to him, but not at the expense of that security. Not that for me to focus on, to me to doubt and focus on all of my lack and say, okay, I'm not doing a good enough job. That means I'm not close to him. But to see the Lord's goodness and to say, I want to be close to my shepherd. And so I saw that in my friend, that he didn't have a me's, my performance, my problems. It was a genuine forgetting about himself, and I think that's a compliment to the Lord when we forget about ourselves and not saying I'm such a sinner. I am definitely a sinner, but I appreciated the songs that we sang today. I'm just a sinner, but I'm saved by grace. Praise God. And so. And the reason why I believe that glorifies God is because Jesus said, my burden is light. I don't think it glorifies God to say, my life is so hard. I think it glorifies God to say, my burden is light, because Jesus said, if I'm under his yoke, then I have a light burden. No matter what I'm going through, I don't want to say, oh, things are so hard. I want to say, Jesus is with me. His yoke is easy. And I don't know if children, you know what a yoke is, but a yoke is when there's two animals and they're pulling a cart or something. A yoke is like a piece of wood that goes across both their necks, and it's tied to both necks. So two animals can share one load. That's what a yoke is. So two animals sharing one weight, one burden. They're carrying it together. And Jesus was saying, I'm under a yoke with you, but it's light. And it means that he's carrying the yoke too, but it's like an elephant and a mouse under the same yoke. and I can be a mouse that's sweating so much, saying, oh, this yoke is so heavy, so heavy. But the mouse doesn't really need to be sweating if he looks over and sees who's really doing the work. Why do we sweat so much? It's because we imagine that everything depends on us. But when we see that the Lord is already carrying the burden, and that I'm just have a little bit of the burden that he gives me that he'll also help me with, then it's not such a burden after all. But to see Jesus is there, to look at the shepherd and to not carry the guilt, the fear, the condemnation, the insecurity about what if this happens, what if that happens. It's because the good shepherd is there, and that's God's will for us, to be very restful sheep, not concerned about the worries of life and and not weighed down with condemnation. And so, there's a lot of sheep in the pen, but I'm blessed at the thought of Jesus saying, "Come closer to me in the pen." Don't doubt whether I'm in the pen, but to see that God's never going to cast out any sheep in the pen. But not everybody, there are very few, I think, who live very close to Jesus, that deeper life. But if we want, I think we can get as close as we want to get while we're in this life, if we seek him with all of our hearts, and to say, I want more of you, Lord. And so I saw a bit of that in Dave Wilkerson's illustration when his son said that about him, and say, I want more of that heart that says, I want to seek more of Jesus, plain and simple knowledge of Christ and of God. And so this simple picture blessed me and helped me appreciate Jesus more, and I hope it can bless you too. Thanks.